Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 23 to 25, continued. Dars-e-Qur'an Hakim, by thinker of the Quran, Allama Ghulam Ahmad Parwez. My dear friends, today is the 11th of August, 1968, and in our new series of Quranic lessons, we had reached verse 23 of Surah Al-Baqarah last Sunday. From that point, the discussion continues. 2-23.
The forces of nature have scattered every kind of provision for human life throughout the universe. The discussion there was that Ya ayyuhan nasu ubudu rabbakumu ladhi khalaqakum waladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. 2:21. O mankind, follow the laws of your sustainer who created you and those before you so that you may guard yourselves. And after that it was said, الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم. 2:22. This contained the central point, that after creating you, God took upon himself the responsibility of Rabubiyyah, nurturing and sustaining. And to fulfill this responsibility, he spread out so much provision for life upon the table of the earth. Its purpose was rizqan lakum, sustenance for you. And the address begins with Ya ayyuhan nasu, not to a particular group, not to a specific community, not to the believers alone, but to all mankind. Here the entire human race is addressed, and it is said rizqan lakum, meaning that this provision, this sustenance, is for all of you, for all humanity. Thus the Quran itself clarifies that the resources of life that have been provided are lakum, for all people, and it is said, وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. 53:31. All that is in the heavens and the earth belongs to God, yet the provisions within it are lakum, given for your benefit, for the benefit of all humanity. This is the purpose. Since ownership belongs to God alone, the idea of anyone else having ownership over these resources does not arise. Therefore, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. 2:22. When you know that this is not your ownership, nor can it ever be, then associating anyone else in this ownership is to make them a partner or equal to God. Do not do this. This was the subject of discussion in the previous lesson. My dear brothers, after that I had touched upon the next verse. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا. If your hearts feel a kind of hesitation or disturbance about this, because up until now a firmly held principle had been that all these things, resources of life, belong to private ownership, and now suddenly such a great revolutionary declaration is being made. And the claim about it is this: I am not saying this myself. It is that God who owns all these things who is saying it. The owner himself is declaring that he does not allow anyone else to share in his ownership. So the question naturally arises, is it really the owner who is saying this? Or is it simply a human being who, on his own, is presenting a new law? Just as earlier laws were man-made, perhaps now another human being is giving a new law that contradicts all previous ones. Could this be the case?
Is there anyone who can present even a single statement comparable to this heavenly lamp? It is said that if such a thought arises in your hearts, then the next point follows. The Quran makes this claim, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ. 2:23. Then bring a surah like it. This challenge is not mentioned only once. The Quran repeats it in several places. At one place it says, bring another Quran comparable to this Quran. قُلْ لَئِنِ اجْتَمَعَتِ الْإِنسُ وَالْجِنُّ عَلَىٰ أَنْ يَأْتُوا بِمِثْلِ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ لَا يَأْتُونَ بِمِثْلِهِ وَلَوْ كَانَ بَعْضُهُمْ لِبَعْضٍ ظَهِيرًا. 1788. Even if all humans and jinn were to gather together and assist one another collectively in producing something like this Quran, they would not be able to do so. Meaning, the Quran does not merely say, bring something like it, but also declares that you will never be able to do so. Here, the challenge concerns the entire Quran. In another place, this challenge is, so to speak, softened a little, lowered in degree, and it is said, قُلْ فَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مِثْلِهِ مُفْتَرَيَاتٍ. Bring 10 fabricated surahs like it. وَادْعُوا مَنِ اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. and call upon whomever you can besides God, if you are truthful. Here again, the same point is made. Gather whomever you wish, the thinkers of the world, the framers of laws and constitutions, writers, reformers of religions, call anyone you like, excluding God. Even then, it is said, you will not be able to do it. This challenge concerns 10 surahs. In yet another place it is said, produce even a single statement like it. فَلْيَأْتُوا بِحَدِيثٍ مِثْلِهِ إِنْ كَانُوا صَادِقِينَ 52:34. The Quran's claim rises above the limits of time and space. The verse I just recited says, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ. In other words, the Quran itself continues to advance its claim, and at the same time narrows it down. The challenge is so immense that it declares you cannot even produce a single surah like it. This challenge of the Quran, this tahaddi, has stood firm for 1400 years, and it is something truly extraordinary. Because it was not meant only for the people of that era, the Quran is placed before all of humanity until the day of resurrection. Whatever claim it makes is not temporary, not for a limited group, but for all mankind, beyond the boundaries of time and space, for every era, every nation, every people. Thus, it is a tremendous challenge, continuing across a vast span of time. Clarifying the linguistic meaning of the word surah in relation to the Quran's eloquence and greatness. The word surah linguistically carries several meanings. It can mean a high wall, it can simply mean height, and it can also mean a story or level of a building. I believe that this last meaning, a story of a building, is closest to what the Quran intends to convey. The Quran provides guidance on the various dimensions and aspects of human life. When all these aspects are brought together, they encompass the entirety of human existence as a whole. The analogy of a building is very clear and concrete. A building has multiple stories, and together they form a complete structure. Similarly, the Quran becomes a comprehensive system, a complete guidance, but it contains many departments: family life, social life, economic life, political life, the life of a community within a region, international life, universal human life, life in this world and life in the world to come. Thus, you can see that it resembles a grand, magnificent building with many stories. At one point, the Quran challenges, build an entire structure like this one. But then it narrows the challenge and says, produce even one story like it. Meaning, if not a complete code of life for man as a whole, then choose just one aspect of life, and I have just listed many, and produce something comparable to the Quran's guidance for even that single aspect. This claim of the Quran, which is called its miracle, rests on the concept of ijaz, meaning that the other party becomes incapable of matching it. So when the Quran says you cannot produce anything like it, what exactly does that mean? In what sense can it not be matched? On this point, extensive discussions have taken place in our scholarly tradition. The importance of language in the Arab world, and the Quran's style as an open challenge. In that era, the Arabs gave extraordinary importance to language. They claimed that their language was the most eloquent and expressive of all languages. They were proud of this, even boastful. They called themselves Arab, and the word Arab itself means one who possesses a clear and eloquent tongue. The rest of the world they called Ajam, and Ajam literally means mute. In other words, their claim was, we alone possess speech. The rest of the world is tongue-tied. I would be deviating from my topic if I said that this claim of theirs was merely arrogance. In fact, it was a historical reality. The Arabic language, refined over thousands of years, had indeed become deep, comprehensive, and vast, and the Arabs had mastered it to an exceptional degree. If they made such a claim, they had every right to do so, because their claim was specifically about linguistic excellence. And then the Quran, even within the Arabic language, is regarded as the most eloquent and most powerful expression ever produced. I am speaking here purely from the standpoint of language. Even among the Arabs themselves, the language had reached its highest level of maturity. A remarkable fact, despite linguistic mastery, they lacked written literature. It is astonishing that although they possessed such mastery in speech, they had almost no written literature. The Quran is the first book of Arabic prose, and the Arabs themselves acknowledged it as the first book. Not all Arabs were Muslims. Many were non-Muslims, And during the 23 years in which this challenge was being issued, the non-Muslims living right there in Mecca and Arabia were also being addressed. They too were being challenged, produce even a single verse like it. Think about it. These opponents of Islam fought battles, shed their blood, engaged in constant conflict and warfare. If it had been possible, and for them it should have been the easiest, to meet the challenge on linguistic grounds, then they never would have needed to go to the battlefield. The matter could have been settled in a single gathering. They could have accepted the challenge and produced something comparable.
A striking point, they never even attempted to meet the challenge. It is worth reflecting on this. Those who claimed such eloquence, who were so proud of their linguistic mastery, listened to this challenge for 23 years. They opposed Islam fiercely, even to the point of sacrificing their lives. Yet not once did they say, "Yes, we accept the challenge, bring it before us." They could have held a gathering, attempted to produce something similar, and even if they failed, at least they would have shown the courage to try. But history bears witness. They never attempted it, and in the 1400 years since, no one else has dared to attempt it either. So the question arises, was this challenge merely about language? In our scholarly tradition, most of what has been written focuses on this linguistic aspect, that the Quran's eloquence and rhetoric are unmatched. But the Quran itself explains the real purpose of this challenge. As I have already said, there is no doubt that the Quran is unparalleled in eloquence and expression. But the Quran itself has explained the purpose behind this challenge. And when the Quran states the purpose of its own uniqueness, then no other explanation is needed. The Quran says that nothing equal to it, or better than it, can ever be produced. Before this, the Torah was mentioned, the original Torah given to the prophets of the children of Israel, not the versions that exist now. After mentioning that divine book, the Quran is mentioned, and the Quran declares this about itself. The Quran's system of life, its eloquence and perfection reflected within the Quran itself. My dear friends, my point is that the Quran itself has explained in what sense it is unmatched and unparalleled. It says, قُلْ فَأْتُوا بِكِتَابٍ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ هُوَ أَهْدَى مِنْهُمَا 28:49. Say, bring a book from God that gives better guidance than these two. Leave aside the Torah, that is a matter of the past. Bring any book, any code of law that provides better guidance than this, that is a better guide, that contains better guidance. The word ahda is in the superlative degree, meaning the best in guidance. Thus, according to the Quran's own clarification, when it issues the challenge to produce something like it or better than it, the meaning is, if you cannot bring something better for the guidance of humanity, then at least bring something equal to it. Not necessarily a complete code of life, even one aspect of that code. Choose any one field of human life and produce a system of guidance that, like the Quran, rises above the limitations of time and circumstance and provides enduring direction for humanity. So now the responsibility falls upon the followers of the Quran to take the various aspects of human life and demonstrate to the world that the Quran provides guidance in each of these areas. Bring forth your systems of life, not created by one person, but by generations of human thinkers. The Quran says, وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ 2:23. Call upon all your helpers besides God if you are truthful. The Prophet ﷺ and the companions proved the Quranic system through practical demonstration. So why the downfall today? During his lifetime, the Prophet ﷺ and after him the noble companions presented this Quranic challenge to the world not merely through words, but through action. They took each aspect of life and according to Quranic teachings, shaped a practical system. Then they challenged the world. Show us, has any human intellect ever produced a system like this? Whether later nations adopted this system, introduced it into their own societies, or modified it to suit their needs is another matter. The real question is, why has humanity, which needs a complete system of life, man as a whole, been unable to produce anything like it? Let me add this. The greatest misery in the world today, the worst suffering humanity faces, exists because human beings lead a fragmentary life. Some live at the purely animal level. For them, the question of higher purpose does not even arise. Others possess self-awareness, yet even they live fragmentary lives. One aspect of their life may be excellent, but when you look at another aspect, you find the darkest contradictions.
Observe one field of their system. You may say, remarkable, look how far they have advanced humanity. But within the same state, the same society, look at another aspect of life, and you are left wondering how can such intelligent people, capable of such brilliance in one area, be so lost in another? Today, nations across the world have divided life into partial segments. My dear brothers, what I was saying is this. Look at the great nations of the world today. Look at their vast systems of life. In one aspect, they appear admirable, even enviable, and in another, they appear utterly dark. Take, for example, Sweden, capital Stockholm, and Norway, capital Oslo. They have established welfare states. The condition of these welfare states is such that no other state in the world matches them. In these societies, no individual is ever left deprived of any necessity of life at any time. This aspect of their system is indeed remarkable. But you will be astonished to hear that the highest rates of suicide in the world occur in these very states. Why is this so? Because they took one aspect of life and advanced in it in a lopsided, unbalanced manner. When they fulfilled the material needs of life, they assumed that the problem of humanity had been solved. But the problem of humanity is not so simple that it can be solved merely by fulfilling material needs. We say nothing. Ask them yourselves. After providing all these comforts, what is that other thing that drives people to suicide? Why do these states have the highest suicide rates? This is only one example. If we conduct a comparative study of various systems of life, we will find that in one aspect they achieve extraordinary progress, but in other aspects of life they are not merely lacking balance. They fall to such depths that one is left astonished. How can people who rise so high in one field fail to understand even the simplest truths in another? The reality is that the Quran takes life in its entirety. It takes man as a whole and provides guidance for every aspect and every sphere of human life. And its claim is that no human-made system, no human-devised law can provide guidance comparable to it. This is the Quran's claim. This is its challenge. The duty of a nation that possesses the Quran and its own tragic condition. My dear brothers, regarding this challenge, a system of life that human intellect, not of one individual, but even of all people combined, cannot produce or match, I have said that it is the duty of the nation that carries the Quran to present it before the world in this very capacity. But their own condition is right before our eyes. In our view, if today there exist nations with the lowest and most degraded systems of life, they are the very Muslim nations who associate themselves with this magnificent book. Among them, the lowest forms of social order are found, and even when they do raise their gaze, it is toward the systems created by human beings elsewhere, hoping to swallow the already chewed morsels from others. The decline and backwardness of the Muslim Ummah, the fundamental reason being its complete separation from Islam's system of life. My dear brothers, the issue was never about mere association, that we simply claim relation to the Quran. By naming oneself Abdullah, a person does not automatically become a servant and subject of God. Regarding the Quran's challenge, even today from our pulpits, our prayer niches, and other stages, we continue to declare the Quran has claimed for 1400 years that none can produce anything like it. And after saying this, we feel fully satisfied, as if we have proven Islam's superiority to the whole world. But in reality, not only the world, even the angels of heaven laugh at us, because the condition of our own system of life is at the lowest level, yet we stand before the world and claim you cannot produce a system like ours. The reason is that we have completely separated Islam from being a system of life, and have reduced the Quran merely to the idea that its words are miraculous. We think that this is the essence of its challenge, but these words are not our making, nor do we need to exert effort to preserve them. They have been preserved from the beginning, and God himself has taken responsibility for their protection. So what is it that we boast about? That we are presenting a challenge to the world which the world cannot meet? Is this truly something to be proud of? The Quran has itself established the proof of its truthfulness. وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Call upon all your helpers besides God if you are truthful. Meaning you cannot produce a system of life like this. You cannot produce its equal. And for issuing such a challenge, no single person needs to bear responsibility. Gather all your writers, thinkers, social reformers, and political legislators into one committee. Just leave aside God's revelation, and then ask them to produce something like it.
If you are truly sincere in your claim that you cannot decide whether this code of life is from God or not, and are not merely clinging to doubts out of selfish motives, then you must accept this challenge. You see, this was a practical matter.
Belief in the Quran's uniqueness and the concept of miflahu ma'ahu. My dear friends, in our religious doctrine, there exists this strange notion that even those who declare the Quran to be unmatched also believe in miflahu ma'ahu, that along with the Quran, there exists something equal to the Quran. Think about this. We challenge the entire world, produce something like the Quran, and then we say, you cannot produce its like. Yet within our own belief system, we maintain that we already possess something alongside the Quran that is equal to it. Reflect on this. They divided revelation into two types. One type of revelation produced the Quran, and another type of revelation produced something else equal to the Quran, accompanying it. But the verse I just presented challenges, bring something like this Quran, its like. And yet we say, yes sir, we already have mithlahu ma'ahu. 1,000 scholars issued a fatwa of disbelief against Parwez for saying the Quran has no equal. My dear friends, consider this. Anyone who musters the courage to say that this concept of mithlahu ma'ahu contradicts the Quran's own claim is immediately labeled denier of hadith, denier of sunnah, apostate, atheist. 1,000 scholars gather against him demanding that he be executed simply because he says that nothing can be equal to the Quran. He replies, "Sir, do not hang me alone. Someone else said this first. I am merely repeating it. The original claimant cannot be caught, so you want to hang Parwez instead. But the real claimant is the Quran itself. I only presented its statement. Anyway, so be it."
My dear brothers, regarding those who make such claims, the Quran says, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا فَاتَّقُوا 2:24. What a powerful expression. Those who know Arabic understand how the two particles lem and len take the meaning to an entirely different level. The Quran declares, you will not be able to produce anything like it, not now and not ever. Therefore, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ الَّتِي وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ 2:24. Then protect yourselves from the fire whose fuel is humans and stones, prepared for the deniers. The common translation is, a fire whose fuel is people and stones. But this raises a difficulty. Fine, humans are thrown into it because of their crimes, but what is the point of throwing stones into hell? What benefit does that serve? This has long been a source of confusion. The reason is that people did not reflect on the Quran carefully. Just one more word in the verse clarifies everything. أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ, prepared for the deniers. Stones cannot be believers or disbelievers, so how can stones be included among those for whom hell is prepared? Some said, no, it refers to the idols carved from stone. But think about it. From the same rock, one sculpture carves Hajar al-Aswad, and another carves an idol of Krishna. One stone ends up in the highest place in paradise, the other in hell? What crime did the stone commit? What virtue did the other stone perform? This interpretation makes no sense. Clearly, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ refers to the result of disbelief, and disbelief applies only to beings with choice and intention. The Quran says, فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ 1829. Whoever wills, let him believe. Whoever wills, let him deny. So those included here must be beings with will and choice. A stone cannot possess will. Therefore, if this is the fire of hell, then the stones mentioned cannot be literal stones. My dear friends, in Arabic, an-nas refers to the common people, the masses, and the word hijara from hijr also carries the meaning of people of intellect, shrewdness, sharp-mindedness. The Quran itself uses the term dhu hijrin to refer to people of intelligence. Thus, the verse is contrasting two types of people, an-nas, the ordinary masses, al-hijara, the sharp-minded, clever, calculating elite. Both groups, when they reject the truth, become the fuel of the destructive consequences of their own actions.
Mutual accusations between the masses and their leaders in hell. You will see that in various places in the Quran, dialogues are presented between two groups in hell, the common people and their leaders. As we move further, you will notice that these dialogues are deeply instructive and full of lessons. The conversations of hell are in fact reflections of our own society. It is our self-deception that makes us think hell will only appear somewhere far away in the hereafter. It will come then, but today's hell is already before us, though our eyes fail to see it. These dialogues are astonishing. When destruction befalls a nation, how the masses and their leaders begin to blame one another. Even today we hear the same things. These leaders are so corrupt. After all, the cream that rises on top is only as good as the milk beneath it. People utter this proverb and assume the matter is settled, that leaders are simply destined to be this way. The masses excuse themselves by saying, when the elite become corrupt, that corruption naturally trickles down. In other words, the public absolves itself and the elite absolve themselves. These very conversations are recorded in the Quran. The masses accuse the leaders, they destroyed us. The leaders respond, we never forced you to do anything. The masses say, day and night you plotted, you wove nets of deception, you made such schemes, we had no power to escape them. Then, when both groups are brought before the court of God, each says, sir, give them double punishment. But the verdict that comes, my dear friends, does not spare either group. It is said, yes, double punishment for both. Double punishment for the leaders because they went astray and misled others, and double punishment for the masses because think about it. These leaders were only a handful of people. What power did they have on their own? Their power was you. तुझे तो तू के सिवा कोई कुछ ना कहता था. जनाब हमने बनाया, हुजूर हमने किया. What were they? Their strength came from you. Had you stood up and thought for a moment, what courage would they have had? Forget opposing you, they could not even stand on their own feet. They are like blocks of ice. Apply a little warmth and they melt away. ऐ सनमता सचताइश कर दी खुदास्त. This is not the God who exists independently of others' worship. This is the kind of God who becomes a God only because you bow before him. Choo yake andar qiyamai fanast, stand before them and their godhood collapses instantly. And today you say, sir, give them double punishment, but spare us.
Iqbal's story of visiting heaven and hell. My dear friends, God is saying, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ, both the common people and the elite, both leaders and followers, both those who lead and those who obey. All of them are the fuel of this fire. I recall mentioning this earlier as well. Iqbal, 1877 to 1938, explained this idea in a wonderfully insightful way. He said, I was wandering across the highest heavens, visiting the celestial realms. I saw paradise, I saw the Hudis, I saw Gabriel, I saw the angels. As I was about to return, it occurred to me that I had heard something about hell as well. I should see that too before leaving. So I said to my guide, before we go, let me have a glimpse of hell as well. He said, yes, come. He took me there and made me stand at the edge of a pit. I saw inside it an icy coldness, freezing, shivering cold. Oh, I said, we had heard that hell is full of flames, intense heat, blazing fire, but this is extremely cold. There were no people in it yet. They will enter on the day of judgment, but the cold was overwhelming. I asked my guide, what is this? And he explained it in a single poetic line. Hell itself is cold. Those who come bring their own fuel with them. Iqbal expressed it beautifully. Ahle dunya yaha jo aate hain, apne angar saath laate hain. Those who come from the world bring their own embers with them. Neither paradise has gardens already planted, nor does hell have flames of its own. Heaven's springs and hell's fire both come from within the human being. My dear brothers, regarding the springs of paradise, the Quran says, Yufajjirunaha tafjira, the righteous will cause those springs to gush forth from within their own hearts. Similarly, the fuel of hell is also something we carry on our own backs. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Whoever rejects God's system, even if his name is Abdullah, the result is hell. The verse speaks of kafirin, those who deny the divine system, which has no equal or parallel. Whoever abandons God's system and constructs human-made systems in its place will face the consequences, and that consequence is hell. And this will be a hell in which both followers and leaders will be screaming together. وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنَ النَّارِ. There is no way out of this fire. The human mind finds no escape from it. Rast as yekban ta uftad dar bande deger. One rope is untied and 3 more entangle the feet. Such is the condition of this hell. You loosen one knot and 3 more ropes wrap around your legs. A person cannot escape. The condition of the prison created by man-made systems and the way out. The Quran says, وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنَ النَّارِ, meaning that if you try to escape this hell through your own self-made systems, you will never be able to come out of it.
From here we understand the meaning of the Quranic phrase, min dun Allah. It indicates that there is a way out. Now the point becomes clear. Why did the Quran include the exception, min dun Allah? Without it, there would be absolute hopelessness. But this exception keeps the doors of hope open until the day of resurrection, because God's book will remain preserved until then. Whenever you wish, you can come out of this hell. Do whatever you like within your own systems. Janita lani elalu to see, but wama hum bi kharijina min an-nar still stands. In another place the Quran says, Kullama aradu an yakhruju minha min ghamin u'idu fiha. Whenever they try to escape from it due to distress, the very turbulent waves of their own flawed systems push them back into it. After the First World War, 1914 to 18, all the efforts humanity made to escape this hell only pushed them into the Second World War, 1939 to 45. Today, the world is screaming to escape this hell. Representatives of nations who once gathered in the League of Nations, 1920 to 46, now gather in the UNO. You can see how much outcry there is across the world. What escape route is being sought? What is the human mind trying to invent? Weapons so destructive that earlier wars killed millions, but now, with nuclear weapons, even the elephant along with its howdah disappears. This is the solution they are searching for. But the Quran said, min dun Allah, meaning no solution can be found this way. Only the system revealed by God can rescue humanity from this hell. The Quran says, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ أُعِيدَتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. And if we take this in a more immediate, localized sense, referring only to the people originally challenged, then among the Arabs, an-nar was also used for war, the fire of battle. Even in our language, we call the flames of conflict nar. Their method of warfare included two things. 1. Fighting directly in the battlefield. 2. Placing huge stone boulders on mountaintops. When the enemy approached below, they would cut the rope, sending the boulder crashing down with such force that it crushed everything beneath it. Some interpreters take al-hijaratu in this sense. I clarified this because I understand the earlier meaning I explained to be the correct one. The others did not accept that meaning because in their view, hell exists only in the hereafter.
Heaven and hell depend on the system of life humans establish. According to my Quranic understanding, based on the Quran's own explanations, the beginnings of both heaven and hell occur right here in this world. Therefore, the hell described here is the result of a wrong system of life, a system in which both followers and leaders are trapped together. And for the kafirin, those who reject this divine system, that hell becomes their inevitable outcome. In contrast to this, the Quran immediately presents the opposite picture. وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. You can see how the Quran always brings a counter-image. Opposite the hell of those who deny the divine system are those who establish this system in the world, who believe in its truth, amanu, and not only believe, but also act upon it, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Through righteous actions, they build this system. For them, it is said, أَنَّ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. Gardens beneath which rivers flow. The term Jannah is a profound Quranic concept. The Quran is filled with it. Jannat is the plural form.
The story of Adam is the story of humanity, a life where every provision was abundant. The Quran itself explains that there is a Jannah from which the story of Adam, the story of the human being, begins. I am using this term slightly ahead of time. In just 4 more verses, the story of Adam will begin and its details will appear there. The Quran begins the human story by describing his earliest life, before he entered the complex world of civilization and society, as a Jannah-like life. In other words, he lived in a state resembling paradise. About that Jannah, it was said, وَكُلَا مِنْهَا غَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا. Eat freely and abundantly from wherever you wish. He received sustenance without struggle. In another place, that Jannah is described, إِنَّ لَكَ أَلَّا تَجُوَ فِيهَا وَلَا تَأْرَى وَأَنَّكَ لَا تَظْمَأُ فِيهَا وَلَا تَضْحَى. In that life, you will not fear hunger nor nakedness. You will not suffer thirst nor the heat of the sun. These are the basic necessities of life: food, water, clothing, and protection from harsh climate, all provided without anxiety. The Sufi view, the essence and outcome of this physical life. The first paradise is this one, the paradise on earth. And since life does not end here, but continues onward, there is also a paradise in the life to come. In this sense, there are fundamentally two paradises: the paradise of this earth, the paradise of the hereafter. And this is exactly what the Quran says. وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ. For the one who fears standing before his Lord, there are two gardens. But the Sufi world says, this worldly life is like the life of a prisoner. The greatest torment of imprisonment is the lack of variety. Human development requires diversity. Different aspects of life demand different forms of fulfillment. Therefore, the Quran says, جَنَّتَانِ ذَوَاتَا أَفْنَانِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. And someone beautifully expressed the feeling. Ais Rabnu te jab bhi bon nu ji chanda hai. And Iqbal captured the longing in his own way. Kabhi e haqiqat-e muntazar, nazar a libas-e majaz mein. The Quran's paradise is not escapism or withdrawal from society. The Quran says, Jannatin tajri min tajtiha al-anhar. Reflect on this, my dear brothers. But the concept of paradise in this world has been misunderstood. One idea is that to attain paradise, one must withdraw from the world, retreat into solitude, enter the cloisters of mysticism, hide in caves and forests. Utton draven dahove, de apne hi hujreach. He frightens others with tales of the wilderness, yet hides in his own cell. The idea is that the more one shrinks into isolation, the more spiritually elevated one becomes. All meditation, all mystical practices are imagined to lie in seclusion. But the Quran's concept of paradise is not isolation. It is the establishment of a just, balanced, God-guided system of life within society. The Quranic meaning of zawj, in the context of a heavenly society. The Quran says that if you desire this Jannah, then come, let us show you the method. It says, فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. Enter among my servants and enter my paradise. Join the company of such companions. Kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Be with the truthful. Here, an individual cannot attain paradise alone. This is self-deception, the illusion of monasticism, where a person imagines that through personal spiritual development he has entered paradise. The Quran says this is wrong. Paradise is something that human beings must build collectively. There is no other way. That is why it says, فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. Here the phrase fi ibadi appears. Sir, do you know what it means to enter? As the Punjabi saying goes, Jo ta nal na mil jana. You must merge with the group. Fi ibadi means, come and see first who are my true servants. And the plural of abd, servant, is ibad, a group, a community. You must join that group. Now what is the condition for entering this group? The Quran states, وَلَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ. In our tradition, influenced by Sufism, this is interpreted as the paradise of the afterlife with Otondia Horang, the heavenly maidens from up there. According to this view, Azwaj means wives and Zawja means wife. But that is the Punjabi meaning of Zawja, not the Arabic meaning, and certainly not the Quranic meaning. In Arabic and in the Quran, the word Zawj is used for both husband and wife, but its meaning is not wife. Its meaning is a companion without whom one's own being is incomplete, one who complements the other. In Arabic they say, the two wheels of a cart, each wheel is the Zawj of the other. So why does the Quran say, enter among my servants? Because a Jannati society is not made of isolated individuals. It is made of pairs, groups, complementary companions, people whose strengths complete one another. A community where each person is the Zawj of another in the sense of mutual support, balance, and completion. This is the Quranic concept of Zawj, not the narrow, folkloric idea of wives in paradise, but the idea of harmonious, complementary human relationships that make a just society possible. In individual life, the question of human growth does not even arise. Individually, a person's development cannot take place at all. You call it development, I say go and live in the caves of a jungle. There is no question of reward or punishment, no question of virtue or vice. These questions arise only when another human being is present, and it is through that interaction that completion occurs. Those will be the azwaj, companions whose development occurs through mutual association. That is why the Quran says that a person may find one kind of companion. You know how people who use intoxicants seek companions of their own kind. Bhang is an intoxicant, alcohol is an intoxicant, but a bhang user never seeks out a drinker, he seeks another bhang user. Just as a Sufi and a Mujahid can never truly be companions. A drinker seeks another drinker. So people form pairs of their own kind, and it may happen that bhang users become each other's zawj, and drinkers become each other's zawj. But the Quran says, Azwajan mutahara, purified companions. These are the companions, my dear friends, these are the ones. These are the ibad, servants of God, whose companionship forms the foundation of paradise. And because the Quran begins this system on a small scale, from the home, the two individuals who form the nucleus of a household, the first crystal of society, must also meet this condition. They must be azwaj, and they must be mutahhar, pure. If this is not the case, then the Quran says, Al-khabithatu lil-khabithina, wal-khabithuna lil-khabithati. Impure women are for impure men, and impure men are for impure men. Yes, such pairs also exist, the impure for the impure, the pure for the pure. But the Quran's phrase, azwajan mutahhara, refers to that community, that group of purified companions, the mutahharin. These are the ibad, whose collective life forms the paradise described here. And its special characteristic is, tajri min tahtiha al-anharu, rivers flow beneath it. In a heavenly society, there is no sign of sadness or withering. Among the Arabs, there was a common expression, all the gardens that remain green and fresh, all the fields that are irrigated. For these, they used the word lush and flourishing. The two words I used, shadab, fresh, and sirab, irrigated, both inherently contain the concept of water. Without the idea of ab, water, there can be no freshness, no vitality, no irrigation. In any language, without water, how can there be greenness? That is why the Quran uses the Arabic idiom anhar. In our language, nahr means a large canal, but in Arabic, even a small stream of flowing water is called nahr. As the Punjabi saying goes, arjanu asikinia, even a trickle of water is called nahr. And in the deserts of Arabia, if they found even a small flowing stream, they called it bahar. For them, bahar did not only mean the sea, but also a river. So anhar refers to the small water channels that run through gardens. The Quran repeatedly says that such gardens will remain forever green and flourishing. In another place, the Quran says, tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, ukluha da'imo wa dhilluha, meaning that their fruits and their shade will be everlasting. Iqbal expressed this beautifully. Ye naghma fasle gulu lala ka nahi baband, bahar ho ke khiza la ilaha illallah. This system is not bound by external seasons. It is ukuluha da'imo wa dhilluha. Its fruits and shade are perpetual.
Quranic thought produces streams that never let the human heart wither. In another verse, it is said, Tuti ukulaha kulla hinin bi'ithni rabbiha. According to God's law, it gives fruit in every season. This does not mean that once your forefathers established the system, it will continue to bear fruit forever without effort. No, it will only continue as long as the streams beneath it keep flowing. And about those streams, the Quran says that believers bring them forth from their own hearts. But when hearts become hardened, the Quran says, Summa qasit qulubukum. When your hearts turn to stone, then where could your gardens remain? They all dried up. Therefore, the Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Those who maintain this condition will have such gardens. The difference between temporary systems and perpetual systems. Some trees or crops bear fruit only once, never again. For example, after a banana tree gives one crop, no matter how much water you give, it will not bear fruit again. Such is the case with systems built only on human intellect. They may give fruit once in one season, but not perpetually. The Quran describes such systems. كُلَّمَا أَبَاءَ لَهُمْ مَشَوْا فِيهِ وَإِذَا أَظْلَمَ عَلَيْهِمْ قَامُوا. When lightning flashes, they walk in its light. When darkness falls, they stand still. But the Quran's system is different. Its continuity lies in being established upon God's permanent values. Once established, it must be continuously maintained. It cannot be abandoned. It is a continuous process. The Quran says, فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Do not die except as Muslims, meaning until the very end of life remain committed. If at any point you abandon this commitment, the fruit ceases. This is not like the worldly idea, एक वारी काठमारी हुई हैगी है ते चलो लखापति हो गए, ओ सरमाया पुत्तर तेकर पोतियां तेकर खांदा तरिया चला जाए. No, here it is continuous effort, striving and struggle. That is the name of this system, and this is a truly remarkable concept.
Just as the human body cannot be divided into fragments, the system of life cannot be broken into pieces. Remember what I am saying. This discussion about sustenance is only one aspect of the system, what you casually call the issue of bread. It is not the whole. It is only one surah of the Quran, one story of a vast building. For the complete development of the human being, what is required is iman, amal-e-salihah, faith in all divine values. Just as life cannot be fragmented, it is an indivisible whole, a unity. The same is true for the system that shapes human life. When you say he is very healthy, you do not mean that only his liver is healthy or only his heart is healthy. You are speaking of the whole human being. Health is an indivisible whole. Similarly, a person who is good in one aspect but corrupt in another is not a good human being. At most you may say he has this one good quality, but for a person to be truly good, his entire humanity, his whole being must be good. Just as you cannot divide a human being into separate compartments, you cannot divide the system that nurtures humanity into pieces. Only a complete system produces complete development. This complete system is called Al-Quran, a unified whole with many aspects. These aspects are not separate, isolated parts. They are like the different facets of a single diamond. Each facet reflects a different angle of the same unified reality. These facets appear in the various roles of human life, as a father, as a husband, as a worker, as a friend, as a functionary of the state. These are different roles, but the human being remains one unified self. It cannot be that he shines in one role and is dark in another. As the poet says, Gahar mein aabe gahar ke siva kuch aur nahi. In a pearl there is nothing but the essence of the pearl itself.
God has preserved within the Quran the cure for all psychological ailments of humanity. These are the purified companions, al-mutahhir rifaqa, whose collective is called by the Quran Jamaat-e-Muslimin. By joining their ranks, one enters paradise. Through their mutual cooperation, paradise is built. Within this community there is tasalum, harmony, coordination, unity of movement. These are the true Muslimin. Since the word tasalum has come to the tongue, let me explain. This is the correct Quranic concept of the community of Muslimin. Sometimes you see a single horse pulling a carriage. Sometimes you see a carriage with 4 horses yoked together. Those horses can pull the carriage smoothly only when their feet rise and fall in perfect unison. A group of horses whose steps match each other is called tasalum. But it may happen that one horse becomes rebellious and surges ahead. This is called adwan. This too is a sin. To break the discipline of the group is a crime. Another Quranic word is ithm, which we translate as sin, but its original meaning is to fall behind one's group out of exhaustion. The Arabs used to say naka athima for a she-camel that due to fatigue lags behind her caravan. Thus, a person who cannot keep pace with the caravan of humanity, who becomes weary, dispirited, depressed, whose abilities become dull, such a person inevitably lives a non-Quranic life, a life in which inner capacities wither away. Depression, stagnation, and falling behind are all forms of ithm. The Quran's system, therefore, is not merely a moral code, it is a psychological cure. It creates a community in which no one surges ahead in arrogance, adwan, no one collapses behind in despair, ithm, and all move forward together in harmony, tasalum. This is the Quranic remedy for the psychological diseases of humanity: loneliness, fragmentation, inferiority, superiority, depression, and rebellion. The cure lies in becoming part of a purified, coordinated, mutually supportive community. The world of Sufism carries within it a long, harsh state of depression and decline. The entire system of tasawwuf around you is filled with melancholy and deterioration. It is full of pressure. It suppresses human abilities, crushes them, until a person dies even before physical death. This is the extreme of depression and decline. In contrast, unrestrained rebellion is also not a system. It has no discipline, no order. Inside a human being, there are powerful forces. If they are left uncontrolled, they become like a flood, a raging torrent. If the water in a canal dries up, it is no longer a canal. If the water breaks the banks, it is no longer a canal. It becomes a destructive flood. A canal is only a canal when water flows within its boundaries. These are the streams, anhad, that must run through the garden of human society so that its freshness becomes boundless, its vitality unrestricted. My dear brothers, today we studied the 25th verse, where it was said that this provision is mutashabihan, similar yet ever renewing. We explained this through examples. In the next session, we will take up the question that may have arisen in your minds. Why does the Quran explain things through examples? What is the purpose and outcome of these parables? We will discuss this next time. Rabbana taqabbal minna, innaka antas sami'ul alim. Our Lord, accept this from us. Surely you are the all-hearing, the all-knowing.